Dominaria United is here, and as Magic returns to Phyrexia, all the content creators are in a buzz, trying to give you their opinions as to the best cards from this set as we hype this up from a lore perspective. I'm here to add to that collective thought pool and hype it up in terms of Modern, giving you my top 5 cards that I think are going to have an effect on the Modern format. Now, specifically, we're going to add kind of some cards that I think will add some corner value, and then obviously the cards that we're probably going to be seeing for the next little bit. So let's add that from all aspects. If you think my list is great, leave a like. If you don't, or if I'm missing any cards, leave a like anyway and just let me know what you think. I'd love to have a chat about it. First and foremost, we got Liliana the Veil as an honorable mention, providing reprint value, making the card a little bit cheaper. I mean, the card's not even playable, honestly. What you can do in 3 colors with Jund, you can do better with 4 colors in Omnath and 5 colors in whatever Yorion deck you got going on. But Liliana the Veil, I want to mention not only because it's now standard in Pioneer legal, but in Modern, providing us with the best artwork, in my opinion, that we've ever received for Liliana the Veil, providing a great majestic flow, a bold purple, great power in the stance she has, and just the artwork in the back with the mirror showing her off with the veil, but kind of portraying what she sees herself to be, her past. And there's just so many things in the imagery here. The artist did a fantastic job. This was a great piece, and honestly, one of the best arts I've ever seen in recent history for Magic, from a kind of main character perspective. So big shout out to that. But at number 5, we're going to start off nice and simple. Founding of the Third Path. A lot of hype from Aspiring Spike from this, but as a kind of mill channel myself, I got to give it some love as well. So a new mechanic coming out of the sagas is read ahead. So in sagas, you would have to go piece by piece. So in Modern, the most playable saga is Urza's Saga. You'd have to go piece by piece, turn by turn. Read ahead allows you in these sagas to jump ahead to chapters. You can skip chapter 1, go to chapter 2. You can skip the first 2, just go to chapter 3, or you can do it the normal way and go through all. And I think this has a lot of value. Well, not only Aspiring Spike as well thinks this has a lot of value with See the Truth, where you can kind of impulse off the top. So you look at the top 3 cards, put one of them in your hand at sorcery speed. But then if you cast this from anywhere else, then you can put all 3 into your hand anyway. So the value you get out of that is at the kind of third piece. You exile an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, you copy it. So you're essentially kind of casting it from exile, you're exiling it out of your graveyard. You'll then be able to get all kind of pieces from there. And then the top end allows you to get some value out of a cheap card, instant or sorcery, from your hand early on. Now, I want to give this a shout out to kind of Mill, in the sense that it's not something that I mentioned in my original video discussing it, but because the card is inherent card disadvantage, that first mode you pay 2 mana to cast kind of 2 spells, but you're casting 2 mana to get 2 cards but 1 card's worth of ability. So card disadvantage. What's nice about that is you get 2 cards out of your hand for Ensnaring Bridge. So on turn 1, you get a land down, get a spell. On turn 2, you get this card down, 2 spells out of your hand with the land. And then on turn 3, you play a land Ensnaring Bridge. Your hand is pretty damn low considering the type of cards that exist in Modern. You know, Murktide coming down, big elementals, whatever it might be. Pretty good synergy with Ensnaring Bridge. Now, Ensnaring Bridge is a very tough card to actually make work in Modern these days, all the bounce effects and prismatic endings. But I think, especially for mill players and other prison style effects, Ensnaring Bridge and Finding the Third Path is fantastic. Now, I will direct you, in essence, like you get all the abilities here, and I've explained my little bit, but I will direct you to kind of Aspiring Spike's article on Channel Fireball talking about this. So find it here, released on August 23rd. You're going to get kind of a more holistic approach to how this card is going to see play in Modern. I'm here to touch on that. Now, at number 4, I wanted to bring up Rundvelt Hordemaster. Now, I wanted to bring these up in terms of the lords themselves, because it's always nice to see the creature decks gain something, but I think this has a unique effect in terms of how it can be manipulated. Now, it's other goblins, so it's going to be a 2 mana 1/1. Doesn't have haste, doesn't have anything interesting like that. But playing with the top card of your library is always something that the Modern and Goblin decks are doing right now, especially with Kiki Jiki and kind of Conspicuous Snoop. So there's already kind of manipulation at the top happening, but because of the fact that Rundvelt triggers and you can exile the top card of your library and cast it this turn if you want, you can use cards like Sling Gang Lieutenant to then further manipulate the top card of your library. If you have this, if you're grinding out, you can exile the goblin, target player loses a life and you gain a life, but then you then get to play the top card of your library. So if you don't have the Snoop out, or you're trying to, you know what card it is, you're trying to churn through, this is going to be a great way to kind of maximize on the information that you have by looking at the top card of your library. So I think it provides a nice little cool grind piece, probably like a 2 of in the Goblin decks. It's not going to change the deck or bring it up any tiers, but it's another tool that you have access to that can give you an edge in a certain situation. That's what you want out of cards like Rundvelt Hordemaster, Goblin Warrior, fantastic Lord piece. At number 3, I want to talk about another Lord in Vodalian Hexcatcher. Now, there are kind of other merfolk. There is one other merfolk that's actually worth bringing up. But the reason I wanted to bring this up specifically is a kind of cool little niche piece that people aren't thinking of. And it's kind of creating counter magic at a whim, right? So Vodalian Hexcatcher, other merfolk get +1/+1. It's flash. But the cool piece you get with this is not only do you get to sacrifice a merfolk, you get like the little snip that will, you know, counter target non-creature spell unless its controller plays 1. I think its synergy in merfolk is kind of multifold. Now, merfolk these days is playing force of negations, playing the subtlety. It's got a lot of interaction with it, but I think adding a little bit of interaction to its lands is what you want to think about. So you kind of tap Mutavault, kind of then activate its second ability, you turn it into a merfolk, and that's going to give you an instant speed way to, you know, if you have just a blank board and that's the only creature you have, you can use Mutavault out of nowhere to do that. And a lot of players that aren't thinking about this interaction, you're going to be able to get them for the first time or second time. This is a fantastic card for the FNM players out there. Obviously, as this card is playing more and more folk, people are going to realize what this is, but especially in those early days of FNM, get it out there. Get merfolk going. You're going to be able to catch them with this quick Mutavault activation, sacrifice it, use your lands, not your creatures, because then your creatures are going to be able to kind of swing through. You may have other lords that you don't want to sacrifice. Take use of your other resources. And Vodalian Hexcatcher is going to provide that. I mean, just as a 2-mana 1/1, it's not that great, but of course, merfolk is a lord deck. Being blue, you know, have force of negation, obviously. Pitch to subtlety, whatever it might be. But at number 2, I want to talk about temporary lockdown. Honestly, a pretty inconspicuous piece, but I think a 3-mana board wipe is always interesting. That's how you want to think about this. It's a 3-mana permanent. When temporary lockdown enters the battlefield, exile each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less until temporary lockdown leaves the battlefield. And this is really important just in the sense that obviously, you know, it's a non-land permanent, you're not exiling lands. It's not that crazy, but 2 or less is very relevant in modern, obviously understanding that so many permanents, Ragavan, Death Shadow, whatever it might be, are 2 or less in that sense. And there's a lot of permanents that are enchantments and artifacts that are also 2 or less. You're going to get a lot with this. Of course, you're going to get cards like Death Shadow. This is going to be a fantastic card against that. Now, not only, you know, this card is probably not main boardable, but it's going to be a fantastic sideboard piece. You're going to get pieces, almost anything out of Colossus Hammer decks. And then finally, Urza Saga's tokens. So a lot of pieces to this are coming together. But obviously we have bounce effects like Teferi 3 or kind of prismatic ending on 3 out of the 4-color decks. There are a lot of ways to deal with stuff like this, but even in the 4-color decks, I think this is going to be a solid sideboard piece. Just because you don't really want to be playing this in decks like Taxes that are, you know, you're going to be removing your own permanents as well, and you don't really want to do that. So again, a one-of piece in the sideboards of probably white-based kind of control decks. That's where you're going to get the most value out of this. Now at number 1, I wanted to talk about my last card. I think this is the most interesting card in Leyline Binding. 6 mana for an enchantment with flash and domain. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each basic land type among lands you control. So at 5 colorless mana, if you have all 5 land types out, this is going to cost 1 white for a flash enchantment that when Leyline Binding enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Leyline Binding leaves the battlefield. So, you know, an exile effect very kind of akin to white and other effects that have something similar, but the flash and the mana cost are the big ones. So the, you know, obviously the reduction that you're going to get out of this, you're going to see it in the 4-color decks. This is going to be a fantastic 1 to 2 of in that deck, potentially even a piece in the sideboard dealing with other permanents. You can then bounce it as a permanent with your own Teferi to kind of deal with another card that you want to answer, another permanent. There's no CMC restriction on it. You're going to be able to cast this for 1 probably by turn 2. You know, you play a Triumph on turn 1, you play a Shock on turn 2. If you're not playing something like Wrenn and 6, you hold this up with, you know, even in a Holy Heat or a counter spell, whatever it might be, you got this up, you're going to be able to answer a lot. The kind of piece to bring up here is also against 4-color, it isn't answerable really by prismatic ending. Not at all, right? It's 6 CMC, 5 in white, so you're never going to get to that. There aren't 6 colors in Magic, so that is a pretty good piece of protection against that. But obviously, you know, it's soft to Boseiju, it's soft to Teferi. There are a lot of things that it's open to, but even with Boseiju, you get the land, you thin your deck out a little bit, you increase your chance of just casting spells. The deck draws a lot anyway, so in 4 color, hitting that with Boseiju isn't even that bad, to be honest. And obviously it gets bounced, as I mentioned, by Teferi, but if Teferi is bouncing that, you probably have more concerns the fact that a Teferi even resolved against you as a 4 color player. But ultimately, as a permanent, it's really cool being able to have your own synergy to bounce it, flash, the reduction, beating prismatic ending. There isn't a lot of enchantment hate in the format right now in general. There's a lot of permanent hate, there's a lot of creature hate, there's a lot of graveyard hate, but specific to enchantments, dealing with something like this at instant speed, not a lot. So you get a lot of value out of Leyline Binding. Now, that's my list in totality. Let me know what you think. Let me know if I missed anything out of the modern list, and I'd love to discuss it in the comment section down below. There are a lot of key niche pieces that are going to go into sideboards, a lot of other lords that I didn't mention, but Dominiaria United is kind of coming up to be one of the coolest sets that are going to not only affect Magic from a lore perspective, but also affect Modern from a playability perspective. A lot of cool things that you're going to be seeing in the leagues as soon as it's released. Now, we're going to end off the video there. And as I mentioned, let me know what you think. I'm not sure if I need to do a Dominaria United video from a mill perspective. Let me know if that's something you want, but I think I might leave it from a modern perspective. And I hope you enjoy. Let me know how it goes for you fighting Phyrexia in Dominaria United.